In TTRPGs, I struggle to think of any other recurring moment that invokes fun and excitement more than when a player rolls a critical success. And whether that's coming from a traditional TTRPG like D&D and Pathfinder with the famous natural 20, or some other game system where you roll double die successes, or some sort of sequential order on the die, the achievement always is the same result, where the players erupt from their seat in excitement, whether they did some sort of conquering or significant damage over a big foe, or maybe there is some sort of complexity that the GM put out on the field that they were able to overcome, or maybe that achieving role was the only possibility to give a sigh of relief of letting the party survive. Either way, it's an achievement that is never needing to be ignored and always be glorified. But when it comes to those systems, I feel like they are a little flat on what can be done once you hit those successes. And of course, that comes from determinations of the GM and the overall narrative. But in Fabula Ultima, they came up with a fantastic system that gives a lot of options to the players to do more than just one funneled thing. In this episode of How to Fabula Ultima, we're going to be talking about opportunities. Everyone, before we get started, I just want to say I've hit 150 subscribers, which to many probably don't seem like much. But for me, that's telling me I have 150 people that put at least some merit, if not a lot, in what I'm presenting, what I say, and being part of a game system that I think needs to continue to grow and makes me look forward to presenting more information and suggestions on how to have fun with this game. So, for all 150 to 151 I'm now seeing of you, thank you very much for your time. Thank you for your subscription. And I will do my best to continue to give you back and forth narrative and talk to you guys about the game if you ever have any questions. And of course, make suggestions so I can make videos. And I'm always happy to answer questions. But if you are new to my channel and you're liking what you see or have some sort of interest in Fabula Ultima, check out my other videos. Like, subscribe. I am bringing as much as I can to make this game more favorable to new players. And I really think it's a great game for veteran GMs that have gotten kind of caught in their old ways. This allows a lot of awesome new opportunities to get a little bit more better with your improv and be very inviting to promote synergy with the group. But either way, I look forward to more videos and continually seeing my community grow with this game. So without a further ado, let's get back to the video where we look at opportunities. So I'm going to just jump into this one because I don't think it's going to take very long to have you understand what opportunities are, as they're basically just a list of options that are the aftermath of rolling a critical success. But what I want to do is just dial back a little bit and remind you of how you obtain a critical success in Fabula Ultima. And that is simply done by rolling a pair of sixes or higher when you have any type of check asked of you in the game. And if you're not familiar how checks work, I highly recommend you go back and check out one of my first videos I ever put out where it explains what attributes and checks are in the game, because it's really the basis of the rules light system of Fabula Ultima that allows you to understand the rest of the game pretty quickly. But back to the opportunity result. So yes, if you roll a pair of sixes or higher, which goes up all the way to 12. So if you roll a pair of sixes, sevens, eights, 9, 10, 11, or 12, that's going to result in a critical success. Then what happens is there's not really any opportunity of higher damage or anything like that, like you would expect in traditional games. Instead, you're going to see a list of results that really can impact the game, whether it's in combat or not. And we're going to check that out right now. Okay, so now we have our list of opportunities, and I went ahead and changed the layout a bit so you can see the reference, we can have a chat, and for the fun of it, I put the Fabula Ultima Core Rulebook cover on the top because I want to remind you that this excerpt is a page from the Core Rulebook, as many of my other references are. And I want to also remind you that when I do these type of videos, I'm never really big on me just showing you the whole book because I feel that's a little bit of the insult to the creators, the publishers that are wanting to provide a book that obviously is a business venture for them and also helps financially back their success and doing more. And I want you to always be inspired by what I showcase to go get the core rule book. So if you haven't yet and you've liked what you've seen, go do it. It is going to support a fantastic publishing group, a fantastic creator that has done so much of putting their heart and soul and allowing people to understand their game. And I like to do my very best to help them pay it forward and do more for the entire community. So that being said, we're going to go back to the opportunities list. And just one more quick reminder that an opportunity is achieved based off of a critical success, which can be achieved by rolling a pair of sixes or a pair higher than those sixes. So sixes to 12s, it can be a pair of sixes, sevens, eights, nines, 10s, 11, 12s. But I do want to give one little bit of a disclaimer. And there are multiple situations that you will find in the core rulebook that say that the opportunity cannot be achieved off a critical success. But the most impactful and memorable one for me off the top of my head is group checks. And that's a video I do want to go into in another moment of explanation. My apologies, my camera came on and did something really weird real quick. Okay, back up. But when it comes to group checks, basically it puts your whole group and party to roll their own independent check to hope give boons to a leader of the group to roll a higher difficulty level. We'll go into it later, but the point being is you have 4 to 5 players and you're asking all to make a check. It's very high chance, and I'm not saying guaranteed high chance, but it's a pretty high chance that you have 5 people rolling for checks that someone's going to possibly hit a critical success. So that's not the spirit of this game. It's more focusing on singular checks and accuracy checks in combat and anything that would be a fluid roll, not something that is collectively put to have a congregation of a bunch of rolls. So putting that into understanding, that's why that's there. Also, there is the opportunities that can be created based off critical failures. And what that means in most cases, if you or your enemy rolls critical failure, which is 2 ones, a pair of ones, then you all get an opportunity or they get an opportunity. And really, that exists mostly, I think, for the NPCs because everything is such in the favor of the player in most cases. Even if you have a high chance of rolling a critical success and you don't, you still have fabula points that you can try to do that with, stuff that standard enemies do not have. So it gives a little bit of a narrative unexpected oomph for the GM when it comes to combat or in some sort of other narrative scenario that really helps move along or kind of throw a wrench in the story for the fun of it. That being said, we are now going to go to the list of opportunities, and we're going to start with the top and starting with advantage. And it clearly states that the next check, which, like I said, can be an accuracy check, a magic check, an attribute check. Check my video on fit checks if you're not sure what those are. And by you or an ally will receive a +4 bonus. So that's awesome. One of the best guarantees of the game is being able to add pluses to your checks in any shape or form, whether that's through items. And that's usually pretty hard to come by. But this opportunity is a very big and impactful opportunity to have, whether it's in combat or in a narrative. Now, I will say this, it's a lot easier to kind of utilize this check in combat because in Fabula Ultima, when you have an initiative order, you basically get to choose who's going next in your group when it comes to your turn. So if you have only one person that has done something, let's say they're the one that rolls the accuracy check, and it becomes a critical success, and they can either choose to give them the +4, but if it's already a high roll and it's a guaranteed hit, they may want to just pass it off to the next player that's going to decide who they're going up with. So it's worth understanding the logistics of that, but it's pretty easy. It's usually just a discussion with the players. Then we have affliction. A creature suffers the dazed, shaken, slow, or weak conditions. And while I haven't really jumped in conditions, and I don't know if I'm really going to do that in a video because it's such a small niche part of the rules, basically when you have a condition put on you, it lowers one of your attributes die size by 1. Couldn't go any further than a 6, but there are conditions that can stack to lower them pretty significantly. Either way, though, if the opportunity comes from the enemy, they can do the same thing to the player. Then we have bonding. You create a bond towards someone or something, or add an emotion to one of your existing bonds. This is a really cool way of kind of giving more of a narrative expression to whether you're doing something with a group a member in the party, but it's also very specific to see that it does not say within the scene. So it does not mean that the bond has to be attributed unless I am disputed otherwise in an example that I have yet to see. You can put it towards anyone. You can create a bond based on an experience you had maybe just earlier and it reminds you of what you're feeling of them. Or maybe it can be towards a player that is in your group and you make your bond score from a 1 to 2 or a 2 to 3. And that's super impactful. And it's really effective when you're trying to gain further roles and opportunity, well, not opportunities, further roles and advantages in checks at a later time. Then we have faux pas. And I'm going to admit to you, this one's a little interesting because I struggle to see the true impact of faux pas. And I'm happy to hear any moments you guys have used that. But it says choose a creature present on the scene. They make a compromising statement chosen by the person who controls them. And that's interesting as far as a narrative thing, but I almost feel like it's, I could see it where it's like say it's an example of maybe there's a very confident or boastful entity that has got the favor of a group of people or something like that, and you have that, you might make them say something that embarrasses themselves that would maybe change the point of view. That's kind of what comes to my mind. But I'm not much of a min maxer, but I would probably say that's probably at the very lowest bottom tier of things I would pick on opportunities. But I'm not making this a ranking system video either. Then we have favor. Wow, favor is a big time opportunity where it says your actions earn the support of of someone's support and admiration. I just want to say I made a very novice mistake when I first started playing Fabula Ultima, where one of the NPCs that is associated with the antagonist, I hadn't revealed if they are an antagonist or not, and they actually have some sort of narrative connection to one of the players, and they met the player, and I can't even remember the check it was, but it was not a significant check. And that was teaching me do not give out free checks like insight rolls, like you would normally do if someone's asking about stuff. Like, do not just advertise the check. Make the player work for the check before you do anything, because I just gave this check away and they rolled a critical success. They got their opportunity and they were really considering a couple others, but they chose favor, which automatically gave this complex character that is on the antagonist side having favor with them, the heroes, and it created an awesome narrative. But my players were laughing at me, kind of turning the wheels of trying to process how I was going to approach it. But it's working in the favor of everything, including what I had planned. But I wasn't expecting it, and it can hit out of nowhere. Then we have the next one, which is information. You spot a useful clue or detail. The game master may tell you what it is or ask you to introduce that detail yourself. So I think that is a very important thing. This is also where it invites collaborative narrative with the group. Of course, this comes with a collective agreement that what will be decided, but you can really do it in anything. When it says information where they spot a useful clue or detail, whether that's in a dungeon delve and they find a important point of how to get through a certain area, they find a secret compartment, they find a secret lever, whatever the case, that allows them to just bring it into the game. And that's really impactful and helps progress the game without getting bogged down at certain times. Because I'm going to be honest with you, one of my least favorite things in TTRPGs is people coming up with puzzles. I feel it does nothing but bog down the fun and the continuation of the game unless you have a group of people that just love doing puzzle solving, which in my groups are not the case. But neither here or there, information is a great attribute to have put in that opportunity if should that occur. Then this is my favorite as a GM, because very few times do I get to invoke a little bit of villainy in my NPC's actions. But when I get the opportunity to do lost item, where an item is destroyed, lost, stolen, or left behind, I have done nefarious things with this. I have my player who has Blair Claremont from the press start, who has this kind of bardic thing that she had this royal harp that's been a heirloom this whole time, and she was kind of used as her. It's more narrative than anything else, but it used as inspiration of her being her character or their character. They use the pronouns they, but in the middle of a fight, I hit an opportunity and I was like, you know what? I don't care about giving them a, condition or maybe an attack. I'm going to be ruthless. And I made it where this bird creature knocked the harp out of the character's hand and it flew down to probably never be found again unless they go really hard to look for it. And my player, I wouldn't say was stunned, but they were very taken back with how malicious that was, but it was also in fun. So just keep in mind, I love having those opportunities put in, but they can do it too. They can do all kinds of things if the scenario or the narrative setting gives them an opportunity to pick at something. Then we have progress. If you remember back at my video on clocks, I kind of went over this and I brought up this particular opportunity to understand clocks. If you haven't looked at my video clocks, as always, I'm recommending all my videos. It's a great explanation, but that basically makes it where you can add 2 sections to the clock, which is a very favorable thing to do in a session where you need a clock advancement or maybe a rewind or something to help buy time. Then we have plot twist. Holy crap. This is a big thing for players where it says someone or something of your choice suddenly appears on the scene. That's it. There's nothing that says narratively that doesn't make sense. Now, of course, there's certain things, there's rules where say if it's already a definitive statement, like if someone's dead, they're not coming back, things like that. But you can do all kinds of crazy stuff that might bring them into a scenario that is either to exonerate someone that's in trouble or be a piece of evidence, or like it's so crazy what players can come up with. And I think it's one of the coolest things that gives them a tool and also keeps your GM brain working with improv. I've said many times before, this game is a group of collaborative narrative, and it's up to the GM to not just control everything, because that's not what this game is about. It is about opportunities, and no pun intended off that list. Then on the next option, we have scan. This is a really cool ability that there are, I will say this, there is other classes that have these abilities that will be determined based off of a role. But scan is a pretty cool ability where, if you're fighting a boss or something, you want to know maybe if there's a vulnerability, just straight up do that. Show some sort of vulnerability. Now, of course, if they don't, it kind of stinks that you don't have it. Or if you want to look up a trait that might justify who they are, maybe it's a character or something that you're not sure if you can trust them in the narrative. Might be where they would try to scan for a trait to see who they are, what's their ideology, their theme, or maybe in their origin, to know where they might from, and it might lift the lid to the player. But the final and probably one of the most fearful opportunities I see as a GM is unmask. You learn the goals and motivations of a creature of your choice. Back to when I was talking about my player who chose favor with one of the the mid antagonist characters that ended up giving favor of the player's character. I don't want to use the word terrified, but I didn't know at that time so early on I was ready to reveal that. But that made me realize you need to be ready to do that. So if there's ever a time a critical success goes in the favor and they choose this, be ready to open the book up and give them give them pretty much what their intent is. You don't have to go everything and their whole backstory, but make it very clear what their goals and motivations are. Now, it's also worth noting that this can be done in a very favorable way for you as a player to learn stuff. Don't feel bad if you choose that against your GM, because remember, that's part of the collaborative narrative here. But I want to go ahead and just call out any GM. At no point in shape or form should you ever remove any of these opportunities from the list because you feel it's limiting your control. Once again, this is not about you controlling the game. This is not you writing in a whole world and letting them just experience it. This is a world that you should have sat down with your players and have them understand, while you might have 60 to 70% of the injection, if not less or more, you still get a ruling on stuff and get to have overall, I don't use the word control. I mean, it's up to you officiating the game, but at no point should you remove rules to protect your unsureness or insecurity to deal with improv. That's my opinion, but I don't think it says in the book, but If you're limiting your players' opportunities, you're limiting the fun of the game. But from that, that's pretty much the list of opportunities. And you can see all the cool things you can do just based off of a critical success. And I think, and I'm sure there's other games that have opportunities, and or maybe they're not called opportunities, but some sort of boon or benefit based off of a critical success. But this is the first time I ever picked up a book, and it showed so many things you can do with it that really can promote fun in pretty much any scenario of the game. Now, as always, I want to end the video hoping that I was able to articulate the topic at hand. And in this episode of How to Fabula Ultima, we talked about opportunities. And no pun intended, I want an opportunity to continue to invite you to learn more about this game with me. I say that a lot. I promote that a lot. I did a lot of that even in this video, which is now making me a little more open eyed to maybe considering doing a video that talks about kind of a sit down chat of what to expect when you start a Fabula Ultima game outside the mechanics. Because while there's a lot to learn, the rules light system really welcomes you on pretty quickly. And there's a lot of great references in the core rulebook that tells you how to run a game if you're new to the game. But I think there's a lot of people that have played other games that have their own form of expectation of how a TTRPG should work because it was the only game they played, or maybe there's a GM that has kind of just been old in their ways for a very long time. People need to understand that this game is an open-ended collaborative narrative game where it invites everyone to contribute to the game. At no point should the GM overall be barring people from having a good time and coming up with new stuff, as long as you're playing within the rules that what is already finite is true. But at the same time, the players also should be working with the GM of having a good time and not trying to make it a us versus the GM. Because if there was ever a game more that I felt like you're more collectively together, it's in this game. So that being said, I look forward to the next video we go into, and I have many more. Until then, have a good evening, have a good day, and I cannot wait for the next time to show you how to Fabula Ultima.